Our guest this week is an intuitive healer practitioner helping to find and manifest people's life purposes through the Akashic Records. She's an advanced certified soul realignment practitioner, author of Daring to Believe, a memoir of a living kidney donor, and fellow podcaster of the show Butterfly Kisses, a journey through spiritual transformation. I'd like to welcome Amy Gray Cunningham to the show. How you doing, Amy?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent. Excited to have you on. I always love the topic of the Akashic Records. I've had, I think, one or two guests on that, kind of touched on it, but it's just something that it's always fascinates me. But one thing I do want to kind of want to touch on, I think it's important, and then we're going to maybe discuss a lot about your book, but I just kind of wanted to open the show with, so I've lost two people to, I guess, complications of like kidney disease and stuff like that. And it was really touching to see, the bravery that you display in the, I guess it would be unconditional love even, that you displayed for another person. And I'm sure we'll get into that about, with your book, but just, it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an amazing journey.
Yeah.
One that I never would have thought was going to be my journey. When I was a child, if you would ask what I was going to be when I grow up, being a living kidney donor was not on my radar at all. So it was definitely a divine inspiration.
Yeah.
A turning moment for me.
I think it definitely speaks volume to what type of person you are, though. So it's pretty impressive. So with that being said, your book, Daring to Believe, can we just discuss that, maybe give an overview to the audience of, what it's about?
Yes, it is about my journey through the spiritual transformation process of going through the living kidney donor process. And it's, when I was going through the process, I'm an avid reader. I love to read. And it's been 10 years. It was 10 years in July that that I donated the kidney. And back then there really wasn't a whole lot of books out on what it was like for a donor. And the books that I did find were either really dry and clinical or they were just so boring. I mean, it would like process after process. And I'm like, oh. So after the donation, I looked at my husband one day and I told him, I was like, I really think I want to write a book about my journey. And he said, I think that's a great idea, because not only was it a book, not only was it a journey about the donation process, but my husband had a huge impact. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have known the recipient in the first place, because he was friends with the recipient, David. And it was also a love story. So there's a love story intermingled in there. And my husband has since passed. He passed 2 months ago. So it's even more important.
Sorry to hear that.
No, that's okay. He's a very integral part of my story, my journey. So, sorry, sometimes the emotions pop up, but he's part of the podcast, the reason I started the podcast, and the reason I wrote the book. So,
right.
And he was not an avid reader either. And he read the book in a weekend. So if he could read the book in a weekend, anybody can.
That's awesome.
And he actually even said he enjoyed it. He was like, and I even lived through it, and it was actually pretty good.
Excellent. And it's just basically the story of, the process and your like you said, your spiritual transformation through the process of donating a kidney. Now this David guy that you donated, are you in contact with this person?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's a grandpa now. He has how old is Wesley? I think he's 6 or 7. And both his daughters have been married and I've been to both their weddings, and he was able to walk them down the aisle. And literally David was on his deathbed. I mean, he was getting ready to die. And when Jennifer, his sister, had posted on Facebook that she was looking for a donor for her brother because he was going to die. And my husband was reading me the Facebook page. And back then, that was one of the very first Facebook pages out there for looking for a kidney. And I remember telling my husband, because he asked me, he says, "Do you remember the Ensleys from high school?" Because Chuck and I went to high school together. We dated in high school. And I said, "It's like, no, I don't remember. There's a lot of people I don't remember from high school back then. Those days, there was was not always the best little angel." And and I talk a lot about my high school days in the book and some of the things that I did. So because it's part of the journey process of transforming. And I told him, no, I don't remember. And he says, well, David, who was the middle brother, there was Randy, who Chuck was actually good friends with, and then David, and then Jennifer. And Jennifer, we went to high school with, but I didn't really know her. She was the cheerleader and the good girl. I wasn't the cheerleader. I wasn't the good girl. So I didn't really hang out with her much, but Chuck was kind of a tiger with many spots. He hung out with everybody in high school. So he ran with a lot of different people and knew a lot of different crowds. So, but I remember hearing about David's story, and I was in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I heard this voice tell me that I would be the one to donate this kidney to this man that I didn't know. And it was like you and I sitting here talking, having a conversation, and you telling me I would be the one to donate this. And I just knew. It was like an all-knowing presence, and it scared the what out of me. I was like, what the? I turned around like, who is in my kitchen? And there is no way in heck I'm going to give somebody a body part. Are you freaking crazy? And I had just started learning to meditate, and I had a spiritual practice where I would get up in the morning, and I had a spiritual closet, quote unquote, that I would go into. Literally, I had made a closet into my spiritual closet where I'd go in the morning and I would journal and I would write and I would read books. And that was just my practice. And I had been doing it for many, many years. But hearing voices was not something that I'd ever had happen to me. And so, it took a while for me to get to the point of actually deciding that I was going to donate, because I kept saying, okay, God, well, if you want me to donate, you have to give me signs. The fact that I heard a voice was not a big enough sign. I had to have another sign.
Right. Right. Now let me ask you a question. Did that voice ever return, or was it just a one time?
I've heard, yeah, it's returned. So writing the book was another one. And
what do you chalk that up to? Because I've had a similar experience, not as far as donating a body part, but just I've had a similar experience with telling me that I need to start a podcast, because I had no interest in ever doing anything like that. But it's just pretty funny that. So I guess what do you think that is? Is that like your spirit guy? What is that?
That particular voice, I honestly believe was God. I mean, I honestly believe it was divine intervention. I've heard it a couple other times. Now I have a spirit guide that I hear in my head. I hear him. His name is Jonathan. He's a little, well, not little. He's a black jazz musician. I can't say the word. Black jazz musician, and he plays the saxophone. And I hear him in my head. He plays the sax, and sometimes when I'm needing inspiration, I'll put jazz music on, and it just really helps soothe and calm my soul. And I can hear him, and I talk to him on a regular basis. I hear spirits. I hear, and I know. For me, I know when it's my voice, when it's my ego, and when it's somebody else's based off of the way it feels in my body. I don't know how else to
explain. I get what you're saying. Like there's just an inner knowing, right? Or like
yes.
It's just different. It's a different kind of, I don't know, it's just a different feeling or vibe.
Yes.
Yeah.
when I feel it in my heart space, and when I hear it, usually I'll get like a buzzing in my ears beforehand. That's kind of how I know Jonathan's getting ready to come through, because I'll hear like a buzzing in my left ear and I'm like, okay, Jonathan, what you got for me? Or I'll hear like a saxophone playing in my head, and I know that it's him getting ready to come through. And some people may think that I'm actually, sometimes my younger son thinks that I need to go on some medication, but he's like, you really hear voices? And I actually hear my husband talk to me. I have full-on conversations with him from time to time. But
well, that's a wonderful gift.
yes, and my grandmother comes through, my father comes through, and they send me signs, which is really kind of cool. My father, before he passed 17 years ago, I asked him for a sign, and he told me yellow butterflies. Sadie, lay down. It's very one of those little moments.
Yeah.
Sadie, lay down. Come here. There's a beagle walking by. Let me grab it. No, get over here. Get over here right now. That's enough. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So it seems that you're open to, I guess, universal synchronicities then. I mean, you pay attention. You pay attention, obviously. If you're getting signs and you notice things like yellow butterflies and it's representing, maybe something from your father. That's cool. Very cool. All right. So in this book, this, is that kind of how your spiritual awakening began? Or it seems to me like you were already meditating, doing other things 10 years, prior to the kidney donation 10 years ago, right? So did you have some kind of other awakening, or kind of what's your background that kind of, I guess, thrust you into what you're currently doing?
Well, in the book, I talk a little bit about, growing up, I always felt different from people. And I always felt like the oddball. I never quite got spirituality. I never understood organized religion. I never understood. I always thought of God, and I talk in one of my last podcasts about God being this old white man with this long beard sitting on a throne, kind of shooting down either good or bad fireballs, depending on what you were doing. And he had all these angels around him that kind of helped him out, because that's the way I interpreted what I heard in church as a young kid. And for me, God was a very scary thing. And I think, when we incarnate into this world and we come into this world, we're given this amnesia of sorts, and we're given free will to come in and experience ourselves as these divine beings that we are. And that was my journey through the awakening process, is to feel that separateness from the oneness. And that's the way I felt. And I actually felt very invisible. And I don't know if anyone else could relate to that, but I can remember sitting at a very busy intersection in Charlotte and thinking, if I pulled my car into the intersection, would anybody even see me? That's how invisible I felt. I felt so invisible and so like I didn't necessarily belong. And I found comfort in drugs and alcohol, because I was searching for knowing that I didn't know what it was. And I had to go through this process. And so it was kind of like an unfolding, layer after layer. And I had to go down this rabbit hole in order to awaken. And it wasn't until the birth of my son, my oldest son, that I actually understood or come to know what unconditional love was, when I held this baby in my arms and I'm like, what in the heck do I do with this thing? And I'm like, oh my God, somebody else is depending on me. And I wanted his life to be so much better than my own. So that started my search. and I believe that we have teachers in our life that help us to awaken to something greater than ourselves. And my father was one of those teachers. He was an alcoholic. He was separate from me. He was hardly ever around growing up. My parents divorced when we were 8. We moved to, growing up, he was in the military. We moved around a lot. So I never learned how to say, I always learned how to say goodbye. And I learned never to get close to people, because by the time I got close to somebody, we were leaving again. And so it was just very difficult growing up and finding my place in the world, in this world, and making friends. I had no idea how to make friends, really.
Yeah, and that makes it hard for like lifelong friends too, right? Because you may make some friends, but then you're moving on to another location and got to start all over. And then you never really, when you finally get grown, you never really have, I don't know, people that you could look back on and say, it's my lifelong friends from when I was 6 or 7. Or it's interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. But I had a friend when we lived in Syracuse after my parents divorced. And when we moved down to Charlotte, I was 13. And I remember having to say goodbye to her because we were very, very close. And that was another grieving point for me. And we had lost touch from 13 to 50. Actually, she found me on Facebook on my 50th birthday. And that was just the most amazing miracle, I think. And she said she always remembered my birthday and always prayed for me on my birthdays. And, I never forgot her. And so it was really cool that we actually connected again on through Facebook. Everything happens through Facebook. I don't know why. But
sign of the times.
Yep. Yep.
So let me ask you then, what is your interpretation of the Akashic Records?
The Akashic Records, I love being in the Akashic Records. It is, some people think of it as a place, but it's not really a place. It's everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. It's where everything that we think, say, thought, do is held and stored for us, that when we go and when we do pass and we cross over into the next life, we go through a life review, and everything that we do in this lifetime is brought back, and everything from past lifetimes we can actually access now. And the first time I had an Akashic record reading done, I was completely surprised at how accurate the reading was. And I'm like, I've got to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to do this. And so I studied with a lady named Andrea Haas on soul realignment, and it's her interpretation of the Akashic Records. It's her modality. And for me, it's very spot on the way she interprets it. And it's just kind of a path that leads you to understanding and opening who you are. It helps me to know who I am at soul level, and it helps me to be able to share with others my gifts, and by being able to tell you who you are at soul level. And I think that we experience ourselves through our actions, through our choices in life. And we get to choose, because God gives us free will, and we get to choose how we want to live our life. We can either choose to be in the negative, or we can choose to be in the positive based off of who we are at soul level. And we make karmic pattern or karmic choices that, affect how we live our lives. And based off of, thousands of past lives ago, we can still be doing those same karmic patterns in this particular lifetime without even knowing it. And so what the Akashic Records do for us is it gives us the power to understand why we continue to do certain things that we do that create negative karmic patterns in our life.
That's interesting. So is that what's getting tapped into then when somebody's having a past life regression done? You're tapping into the Akashic records. Is that what it is? That is
Pretty much.
really cool. So, oh, wow. So I've actually had that experience being hypnotized and going through that process. Now, is that how you access it, through hypnotization, being hypnotized, or can you also do it through meditation? How do you access this?
You can access it through meditation. You can access it. People who do Reiki access it. You can access it through Reiki. I access it through a prayer. It's a vibrational prayer that I use. You can access it through imagination, actually. And, you know, when I'm doing a reading for people, I actually ask for their full name now, their full name at birth, their birth date, and their birth location. And that actually helps me to locate their record in the records. And I have a little prayer that I say, and then I visualize actually going into the records just for sake of visualization, like entering a record hall per se. But that helps me to be able to connect to that dimension, because the Akashic records are held in the 5th dimension, which, for those who don't know, I mean, there's many different dimensions, but, you know, we live in the 3rd dimension. Our physical bodies live in the 3rd dimension. Our minds live in the 4th dimension, which allows us to time travel. You know, you can time travel in your mind from the past, the present, and the future, and, you know, literally go past, present, future. And then our souls actually reside in all of the dimensions, but the Akashic records reside in the 5th dimension. So you actually have to go into so people don't realize this, but when you go to sleep at night, your soul actually enters into the Akashic records every night, and you do a download or brain dump, for lack of better words, of everything that you've done that day. You can go to school in the Akashic records. If you want to learn something that you don't know and you want to learn how to do, you can, you know, go to sleep with the intent of learning how to, you know, say scuba dive or something. I've done that with wanting to learn different software products on the computer. And the next morning I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I know how to do it. And it's because literally I've gone to school in the Akashic records while I'm dreaming. Why I'm in the sleep state, because your subconscious goes to sleep, or your conscious goes to sleep, and your subconscious can go to work. And I literally know how to work it.
Now, do you remember these dreams, or it's just something that happens while you're asleep, and then when you wake up,
Sometimes I remember them, yeah. Sometimes I do.
That's interesting.
But it's through intent, and through, you know, intending to do so. And your soul knows what you need. And it will, you know, and your higher self knows what you need to help your egoic self in this realm, in the 3rd dimension, experience what you want to experience. So
you talked about karma and how you can kind of carry it over through different lifetimes and stuff like that. What is it about karma? It's like, it's almost as if like what you put out into the universe, you kind of receive back, right?
Yeah, but karma sometimes I think gets a bad rap, because it's, like I said, it's we have free will, and karma is, they say, you know, karma is going to come bite you in the ass, you know, but, and, you know, don't worry about it. You know, he'll get what he's got coming to him. And in essence, yes. But in essence, no, because we're our own worst critic and we're our own worst judge. And there's nobody that can judge us worse than our own selves. And when I say, you know, negative karmic patterns and positive karmic patterns, what I mean is based off of who we are at soul level. I don't mean what society thinks is negative or positive. What may be negative or positive for me may be completely different for you, because we're all created uniquely We're all the same, yet very unique, based off of how God created our soul to create and manifest. And that is truly amazing to me, because everybody is so uniquely different, yet we're all so uniquely the same. And so when we create negative karmic patterns, we're doing that to ourselves, if that makes any sense. And so actually in the records, when I do a reading, I can actually clear those negative karmic patterns for people so they can start seeing clearly, kind of like the blinds have lifted or the fog is lifted, and they can start seeing clearly and making more positive karmic choices based off of who they are at soul level. And that's one reason why I always start off a reading with who you are at soul level, how God created you to create. Because, and then we go through any blocks and restrictions that come up.
And is that part of your soul realignment and helping others to kind of manifest and fulfill their purpose?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And then kind of what's the process? I know you're touching on it now, but like, so that's kind of what's the process?
Well, like I said, the first thing I do is I go through who you are at soul level. Kind of like, God's at the counter or the kitchen, and he's mixing a little of this and a little of that, and it's all him or her or however you refer to God. And it's a little bit of this part, a little bit of this part, and mixes it together and makes the perfect Dylan, based off of how he wants Dylan to create. So I can tell you based off of the records how you were originally created, because there's no time in the Akashic Records. There's no linear time. I can actually see how God created your soul to create when he first created your soul many, 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 many lifetimes ago. Some people don't have as many lifetimes. Some people have many, many lifetimes. It just depends on how long your soul's been around. And so I can tell you those, and it's really interesting because some people are like, oh my God, yeah, you're so spot on. That is exactly me. And some people are like, no, that's not really me. I don't see that. And I tell people, sometimes you're not actually you're not actually living who you are at soul level, because there's so many karmic patterns that negative karmic patterns that you are constantly creating, that you may have forgotten who you are at soul level. So I tell them, try it on, see if this fits. If it doesn't fit, then you haven't really lost anything. But most 99.99% of the time when they try it on and they're like, oh my God, this is so me. And when you are in line, your soul is in line with who you are at soul level, you start creating and manifesting, and things just start happening. And it's kind of like a snowball effect. And especially when all the negative karmic patterns are cleared and you can kind of see, and you start making choices and actions, positive karmic choices and actions based off of who you are at soul level. It's really kind of cool. And then it just kind of starts accumulating, and I'm like, wow, this is really kind of, and life becomes fun, which is what it's supposed to be. Life is supposed to be about joy and love, yes. And, and experiencing fun things, because that's what we came here to do, experience our divinity through our humanity.
Right. And you bring up an interesting point, talking about humans' ability to create or manifest things. Can you touch some more on that? I know just in a lot of the research I've been doing in a few of the past books I've recently read, there's a lot of talk of people being able to manifest their health in more positive ways. So it's just something that fascinates me, and it keeps coming up now. It was something that I don't know. I really knew nothing about. Now it seems like almost every episode or every other episode I'm doing, something comes up where people are talking about this ability to manifest and be almost kind of like godlike, or maybe even be able to kind of write your own future out in a way.
A lot of people call it co-creating. And I believe that, and I've used the analogy before, it's kind of like we're all part of this water. and God is the water, the ocean. And if God takes a ladle and he takes a bit of the ocean out and he puts it into a glass called Dylan or Amy, and he puts the ocean into that glass, just because it's in that glass doesn't mean that it's any less of the ocean. It's still ocean water. So when God creates us, our bodies, and creates our souls, and he puts the ocean of himself into this soul, it's still him. So we are still divinely created, and we were created in his image. So we have the unique ability to create. We were given free will for a reason, and we're here to experience. When we're in heaven, I believe heaven, it's uniquely, we experience ourselves as one. There's no separation. There's no, I know what you feel, you know what I feel. There's no separation. So when we come to earth, we have these physical bodies that separate us, and we see the differences. I see the difference in you. You have a black ball cap on, I have a blue shirt on. We see the differences, and we can experience the differences. And by allowing ourselves, and the way we create is by making decisions and taking action. Those we don't manifest until we actually take action. And sometimes taking no action is just as likely as taking action. By taking no action, sometimes
it's manifesting something on its own. Yeah.
So, when we take action based off of who we are at soul level, things just start happening, because that's the way God created us to manifest. And when we're manifesting the way he creates us to manifest, oh my God, things just start opening up for us. I'm all fifth energy center. I am communication. When I am using my ability to speak, to write, to communicate my authentic self, doors just open. I don't even have to do anything. The doors just open, because that's how he created me to be. And that's when, and I had to go through many different things in order to get to this particular spot in my life where I can recognize that. Having my own podcast, that was a big deal. Writing the book Daring to Believe was a big deal for me. And, I write blogs. I do, I hate doing Facebook posts. That just drives me nuts, but I do it because, yeah, but sharing my authentic self with people, that is when things just start happening for me. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And that's a powerful thing, right? I think it's something that, I don't know, should be taught more people should speak about, because it gives us as individuals power, or at least the feeling of, being able to have a little bit more control over our life. And sometimes I feel like, I don't know, society in a way just gets stuck in this materialistic, like just materialism, like we're in this body and that's just the way it is, and there's nothing I can do, I don't know, with my surrounding. Right.
It's easy to get caught in the victimhood trap. And to be honest with you, I could right now very much, and sometimes I have gotten into the victimhood trap of, oh my God, my husband died. I am this victim. It happened to me. He left me. And, I have gone down that road, and I have to stop myself, because, he made choices in this life that led to his health deteriorating. It led, that affected me, but I made a choice to marry him for, in sickness and in health. And it did not happen to me. And I do believe that there's going to be a bigger blessing that comes as a result of going through what I'm going through. And who knows, maybe my story will help someone else. Maybe my story will affect someone else. I don't know. I don't know what the lesson is that I'm learning here. I do know that I'm not a victim, because I've made choices in my life that have brought me to this point. I chose to love him. I chose to marry him. I chose to be with him. And I chose to hold his hand as he crossed over. That was the biggest gift of my life. So there's many, I could choose to go down that victimhood role very easily. And like I said, there have been moments the past 2 months where I have, but I can also choose joy, and I can also choose love in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the grief. I have that ability because God gives me that free will to do so.
Right. And I think it's important, though, your mindset. You mentioned that, there's a lesson there for you that you need to try to figure out or learn. And I think that's very important, rather than playing the victim role. It's going to help you move forward and grow as a soul and as a person, with this experience of the loss of your husband.
Mm-hmm. Everything is an opportunity to grow. Every experience is an opportunity to grow, and it's how we look at it. It's our perception. It's the way that we choose to perceive, and it's our choice. And how we choose to perceive it that's where the free will comes in. And God allows us to do that. He loves us so much that he allows us to experience ourselves however we want to. And I am not saying to people who have lost loved ones that it's easy, because it's not. It is the hardest thing I think I've ever had to go through. But like I said, I do believe that we have that choice of how we deal with it. We can choose to stuff our feelings. We can choose to medicate our feelings, or we can choose to experience the feelings and to walk through the feelings. Some days it's really, really tough. Some days it's not as tough. Yesterday, my son and his wife came over and helped me put together this cat thing for the wall, and that would have been something that Chuck and I would have done together. And it was really difficult to do that, but it was an experience because I got to experience it with my son. He wasn't necessarily too good with a power tool, but by God, we got it done, and we had a great time. And my daughter-in-law, she sat there and helped us read the instructions. That's what she's good at, is reading the instructions and telling us how to do it. And I held the part, and so we did it, and it's up there. And so far, the cats haven't fallen down. So
That's funny. Yeah, that's great.
I could hear Chuck in my head telling me, well, tell him to do this, or tell him to do that, and tell him to push a little harder on the drill, or, so he was there experiencing it with us.
That's right. And I think you're right on, man. I think perception is very important in situations like the one you're faced with right now. I think that's good for the listeners to hear. And I'm going to ask you a question. I ask almost all of my guests this question, the majority of them anyway. And I don't know, my listeners might get tired of hearing this question, but I think it's just so important. And I love to hear people's answers and perception on it. I think it's something that, if you practice it, it can maybe open up you spiritually. So with that being said, the importance of meditation and the power of meditation.
I meditate just about every day. My meditation can be different on different days. Sometimes it's just going into the Akashic Records and doing a reading for people. Some days it's sitting there and just listening and being quiet within my soul. Some days it's listening to a guided meditation. I go with whatever feels good at the particular moment, if that makes sense. I'm trying right now to learn to look beyond the senses, to actually help move the energy throughout the body, because I notice, especially when I'm grieving, that energy gets stuck within my body and I have to move it. And by the use of the imagination, which is so freaking powerful. I didn't realize how powerful the imagination is. You can actually move energy through your body just by stopping and breathing in and getting in touch with the different parts of your body that's heavy.
Is it through like your chakras or?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can go through the chakras, and sometimes it's just different parts of the body. You just hold energy, because we're all energy. Everything in this world is made up of energy. God is energy. And by moving the energy through and connecting with the ground, I actually connect my body to the physical 3D earth. And then I connect, with my guides up above. And I literally, I can close my eyes and keep my eyes open and do it. And then I connect into the heart space. But by moving that energy through, sometimes it's just by doing yoga as well. Sometimes I'll do yoga just to get the energy flowing through. But for me, meditation is key. And like I said, it can be many different. Some people have a hard time meditating, and because they have a hard time quieting the mind.
I always say practice.
Yes. Even 3 minutes a day, just starting off with 3 minutes with a guided meditation. But I tell people to follow the breath. The breath is life. God breathed life into man. He breathed the spirit into man. And so if you follow the breath through all the way down into your stomach and then back out again, and just keep following the breath. And then if you have a thought come through, let it just pass by, say, okay, thank you. And then go back to following the breath, and do that as much as possible. If you need to, put music on just to kind of keep the conscious busy with something else, and then go back to following the breath. And it's called clearing the clutter from the mind.
That's excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that. And what is your view then? I mean, obviously, I think you believe in reincarnation and past lives, but can you maybe just touch on the afterlife? I mean, where do you think we go from here? And then, do we come back? Do we come back as another human? I mean, can we kind of do what we want to do? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I know you might not know, but what are your thoughts?
I believe we don't die. I believe I know we don't die, because my grandmother, actually, when she passed on, she actually came to visit me, and I saw her literally. And I don't remember exactly all that she said, other than I know that she wanted me to know that everything was okay, and that we would be doing a lot of work together. And I hear her all the time in my head. She's laughing at me now, but she's the funny character. She is a funny character. But so I do know that we don't, our souls don't die. Like in another podcast I talked about, I read in a book somewhere that our souls are like a glass vase. And if you think of like a glass vase, our bodies are this glass vase, and the air on the inside of the glass vase is the same as the air on the outside of the glass vase. And when the glass vase shatters, it's all one air. So that, we don't die, we just continue on. And I believe in bus stop conversations. I believe that we come to Earth to experience and learn new things, because it's the fastest way to learn things in this 3D dimension where time goes by really slowly, it seems like. And so we can come back. I always say that I want to come back as one of my dogs, because they live the life. My dogs are very well cared for, so I want to come back as one of my dogs. Okay. But and just live the life of luxury. But who knows? I don't know. I don't know what we come back as, but I know that it takes a lot of courage to incarnate into this human world, because it's not easy. And heaven is so much better. I mean, just from there's my grandmother and my dad, and now my husband. I mean, and it's funny because my aunt asked me one time, well, do you ever hear from Grandpa? And my grandfather passed a couple years ago, and I never hear from him. And I think it's because, in heaven, we get to do things because we still have free will in heaven too. And we get
Right.
to do things that we never really got to do down here. So I think he's probably flying airplanes or, building trains or, having, doing, he loved to create things and build things. So he's probably, having a blast doing all of that stuff. And, whereas my grandmother just loves to be in everybody's business.
Right.
So. He's constantly talking to me.
It's cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I think you're right though. I mean, I think you do have to be a brave soul to come to this earth. I think there's a lot of pain and suffering, and I mean, the final outcome's never good, right? I mean, as we age and get older, I mean, if you don't die from an accident or something, I mean, it's not going to be good towards the end, most likely.
Well, and it's funny because I've listened to a lot of people who have had near-death experiences. I've listened to people, to mediums who have talked with spirits who've crossed over. And my sister-in-law passed from a really bad illness. She had breast cancer, and she was sick for a very long time. And from my understanding, they say that they're grateful for the experience that they had before they passed because it helped them in the afterlife. It helped them to see things differently because we go through a life review once we pass and we're able to actually see things in a different perspective when we go on the other side. And a lot of people, there's people who are brutally murdered. I believe, that a lot of times we're not in that body when that's happening. We are taken from that body. And so we don't necessarily experience it. And there's some people who do experience it, but the rewards on the other side of that, they are grateful for that experience, which sounds kind of odd. But from listening and researching and hearing other people's experiences and conversations, that's what I've gleaned from that. Now, do I know that personally? No, but that's what I'm choosing to believe.
That makes sense. It's pretty brilliant how you put that. It's good. Can we talk a little bit about your podcast?
Yes, I love my podcast.
So I mean, how often do you release episodes, and kind of what's it about, that kind of thing?
Right now, I release an episode every other Sunday. Eventually, I'm going to do it every Sunday, but for right now, when I first started it, I was working full time. So it was just every other Sunday was what I could keep up with. And now I've kind of taken a hiatus from working, which is what I need to at this particular point in my life. But who knows what will happen in the next few months or in the future. But Butterfly Kisses started as a way to promote my Akashic record business. But I knew it was supposed to be something more, and I knew I was supposed to do it, but I wasn't quite sure how it was supposed to flow. And then I kept hearing that I had lots of questions about spirituality and people's stories because everybody has a story to tell. And I love listening to other people's stories and their journeys. And I wanted to give them a platform to be able to tell their stories, kind of like what you're doing. And so, I like that. And I think we need to have more of that to be able to share our experiences. And because that's how we learn, is through other people's experiences as well.
Right.
And so that the platform allows me to share my experience and what I've gone through, and then also gives a platform for other people to be able to share their experience and what they've gone through. And so far I've had on some pretty interesting guests. This Sunday, not this Sunday, but this Sunday, today's Monday. Yeah, this Sunday I have a lady coming on who had a near-death experience, and she actually went to hell first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pretty interesting. It's an interesting story.
Yeah.
And she feels she came back to tell people that they don't have to go to hell first, and to awaken. And so she wrote a book, and so we'll talk about her book and what she went through.
Well,
and
that's excellent.
Yeah.
Sounds fascinating.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. So what are some, maybe real quick while I still have you here, what are some of your future goals, like with the work you're doing as far as the soul realignment well, you mentioned the podcast, you may turn that into a weekly thing. But what are kind of some of your goals for this stuff?
I would love to work with groups of people to help them learn how to access the Akashic Records on their own, because anybody can access their own Akashic Records. But a lot of people don't realize that they can. And to also share what the Akashic Records are, and to share that, life is a journey, and, give yourself a break. We're not supposed to be experts. We're not supposed to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect. We're just here to experience ourselves, and whatever happens, happens. And just give ourselves a break, and just, we have the opportunity to choose joy over pain, love over hate. We can be uniquely separate and uniquely one all at the same time. And we can choose love. We are divinely love. That is our core. That is who we are at our core, because that's how we were created to be. And that is hopefully my message to get out to people. Am I that all the time? No, I was not that the other day to the poor lady at the pharmacy at Harris Teeter. Probably because I was hangry.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, because I'm also human.
That's right.
But I can apologize, and hopefully, and she was very gracious. And she's like, "You have a great day." I don't want to have a great day.
That's awesome. Well, it's been a fascinating discussion. Where can we maybe pick up your book, find some of the work you're doing, and check out your podcast?
Daring to Believe is found on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. You can also get a link to it on my website at amygraycunningham.com, and that's Gray. I am also on Facebook and Instagram at Amy Gray Cunningham, and I believe on Twitter at Amy Cunningham 1. And then I also have a YouTube page where you can also look at podcasts and stuff on YouTube.
Awesome. I'll put the links in the description. Excellent. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time. It's been fun.
It has. Thank you.